We also have a few other board members. We'll get right to it. Item 1, 21-18 CM 1405F Halton High LED field lighting authorization, Douglas Norwood.
Thank you. This is one of two items where we're presenting options for capital improvements at Halton High School. You authorized us previously to do a preliminary study, so we're bringing that back to you. The first item is LED lights for softball, baseball, and football. The total allocation estimate is $1.1 million, and that's an $850,000 construction cost.
Any questions?
I have one of the, there's 4 poles for 150 and 6 poles for 350. Why don't we just get 8 poles for 300?
Every layout is a little different, and the poles there for under football is strictly moving the poles in addition to placing the lighting. The configuration of baseball requires 6 poles, and for softball, being a smaller field, it only requires 4 poles.
Well, that's what I was asking. Baseball, 6 poles is 350. Softball, 4 poles is 150.
Yeah, but they're not exactly the same configuration.
Okay.
We do have the designer represented here, and he may get some provide additional information, but the basic answer is just that there's more involved in the baseball lighting.
Anyone else?
I'm going to speak generally, and Mr. Sanders, if you want to add something to it, you want to, but in general, yes, they're taller and have a broader cast, and takes more to light a baseball field.
Mr. Faber?
I see LED lights, and that's the future. Is that kind of the direction the parish is moving? Or do they look at different configurations?
We're working with Mr. Roger on the specs for this, but this is a standard. I didn't say standard the art with regard to lighting, but it is more or less the current standard.
Do we have LED lights anywhere else in the parish field?
We currently do not have LED lit fields anywhere in the parish. This is just moving forward to the future of what it will be. Metal halides will be a thing of the past for sure. So we're trying to, when we replace up to the newer standard is what we would go to.
Okay.
That will be the first one change.
But it's Halton being first.
I know.
Can generally get Parkway down right before?
I can do any field you would like, sir.
He's got money. Mr. Newman.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Are we replacing poles or just retrofitting the fixtures? Like, what exactly is happening on softball, baseball, and football with poles? Are we replacing poles and the whole thing from top to bottom, or are we just replacing and retrofitting fixtures?
We're removing all wood poles and replacing with metal poles, proper heights, proper spacing for our lighting outputs, and light fixtures. That's for baseball and softball. We're replacing all pole lighting and poles. So they are up to code for safety measures. For climbing poles, we have poles that are in positions that we have to literally rent equipment, have shipped from Dallas to here, specialized so we can get to it at this point because they've been boxed in, and we don't have tickets. We don't have contractors to climb poles anymore. So that's the point of the safety and the wood poles, removing those. The football field, we originally priced replacing just the light fixtures on the standards that exist. It was brought to my attention by an engineer that for $50,000 more, which was basically 6% of this project, to put new poles, move them to the proper yard line so the light distribution covers from end zone to 50-yard line properly versus where they're on 35 now. They don't broadcast light correctly to the end zones.
So football has existing metal poles that are going to be relocated.
We would relocate them for $50,000 with brand new poles, which in 2 folds, you get the proper location for the lighting, for the dimensions of the field, but also those poles do get cracks in them too. We haven't had them inspected, but if it come 5-10 years down the road, down the line, we get a crack in the pole, we're not spending more than $50,000 to dismantle and put back together.
Does the new Benton High School baseball and softball field have LED lighting?
They do not. That project was engineered 3 years prior to opening, and it just fell within a gap where LED lighting was about, actually there was almost $3,000 a light fixture back then. And so they got designed for what was the time, metal halide. Now LED, we have our engineer, if I speak out of turn, sir, but LED lighting, the price has dropped and it's becoming right time to start switching over to that. Same as we do with classrooms. It's become affordable and cost efficient.
Any other questions, comments?
What's roughly the difference in cost between LED and just a halo?
They're about $600 to $800 a piece difference.
A lot?
Yes.
So
Yeah,
this
it's gonna
project-
get, I'm sorry, I didn't interrupt.
I don't know, I'm just saying it's on this project, I don't have any idea what that would be.
Yeah, you're gonna, the gains and benefits you're gonna have, you have approximately a quarter of the energy costs running those light fixtures. You can turn them on and off without any delay. We have, more direct coverage, obviously better coverage on the field, but for your neighboring neighbors, you don't have that, flood of light that reflects in their houses and their homes that they have concerns about sometimes. This is more indirect cutoff, LED. So there's benefits to it. The long run benefit is we are going to have energy savings, we're going to have proper lighting on the field, and they have 25-year warranties on the light fixtures. So,
You gotta climb up very often.
well, you make a climb if one breaks, but they'll pay for it. So it's that, and it's a safe climb. So a man can harness up, go on and climb, take care of things.
Mr. Haney,
Yes.
is this the biggest need for Halton High School for what we're doing, the allocation of bond funds?
At this point, for our athletic field, is probably the greatest need. We have structures that are starting to become unsafe, and we see some leaning, and we have a hard time lighting the field as it is.
So it is.
Yes, it's
Okay.
definite. Softball, baseball, immediately.
Mr. Rose, I know you addressed it briefly, but would you talk for a second about the danger of the wooden holes that we currently have and the issues that we have with some of those?
Yeah. Currently, we have, at Halton alone, we have woodpecker damage, we have some hollowing of the upper parts of the poles, and these poles are 14 years old, so they are the newest wood poles in the parish. The oldest wood poles is going to be softball field air line, which were used when they were installed and cut off and put back in the ground as well. So we have some very, very old wood poles that are outdated. They're actually stamped, so they have dates on them and their usage on them, and they're all out of it. Halton High, these poles were, so this is the second set of poles at Halton High at the baseball, and they already are showing signs of deterioration. I think this would resolve all those issues for super long term. Probably I wouldn't say lifetime, but nothing for lifetime. So that's something that we're looking at. I think the baseball softball field is definitely serious enough to look at. We have the extra bond money to replace this, but I think it's a better option to take right now and discussing with Mr. Haney. We did the option of the football field because we didn't know what the cost was, and this was a projected cost, so it was determined we would like to involve with it at one time if possible.
I think one thing needs to be said, after we did the bids and we started the wing administration building, those bids came in so low that we actually have $3.4 million left over from that, and that's what all of this would come out of. So the money is there. Anyone else? Ms. Smith?
Mr. President, what normally would this be covered under what budget?
You know, that's quite a pricey tag to come out of the regular maintenance budget. It usually comes up to the board and gets pulled out of O&M projects of sizes or reallocation of monies from other budgets. Unless there's leftover in maintenance, and we don't have leftover.
I mean, I guess my concern is that I think when we did the 2012 bond, it was based on addressing growth issues, and it's a little outside of the scope of what I think that fund was designed for. So I don't know.
I think we've addressed several projects that were not, in that scope of 2012 came out. I think there are needs, and these are needs, and I think that's what we need to be looking at. That's just my opinion.
Madam Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the LED lighting project for all high school.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Newman and a second by Mr. Cheatham. Please vote. I believe the vote, I didn't get the number, did you? Was it? Okay. Where's the number? I didn't, I'm sorry. 21 through 17, CM 1405, East Houghton High paving and drainage improvements. Authorization, Douglas Norwood.
Thank you. Again, these are projects that were identified for Houghton High School. There's 7 listed, and we had to meet with Mr. Haney and made a slight modification based on that. What I'd like to do is just go through each of the 7 sheets and explain what each one is, and then we can go back to discussion. And we're not recommending that we do all the projects at this time because 1 or 2 of them didn't quite flesh out, and there's another that would need to be done following another project in the second phase. So what we're looking for tonight is to request permission for certain projects that we've identified as a priority, and then the others will just remain as a potential future project. So to start off with, and these are in no particular order, practice field on the former Joe Delaney field. The purpose of this is to provide a practice field that does not conflict with the softball field. Currently, there is a conflict there, and they use the outfield of the softball field for the practice football field. And so that's a seasonal change where they have to move fences, and so this layout provides a practice field where we acquired this 4 acres a few years ago. Also, Mr. Haney has requested that we put in an additional half field if possible for soccer because their seasons overlap, and we talked about that this morning, so we are working on that as well. But this particular sheet here shows the practice field on North Hazel, and also some drainage work to divert water away from the stadium, which is another need that we have, and also a retaining wall, which would be required in this instance to properly grade the field because there's about a several feet drop across the field. So we will work with the engineer, Mr. Haney, to refine this, but this is the general idea here. The second one has really gone away. This is...
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Mr. Norwood, could you go back and tell us what all we're going to get for the $400,000 on that field? Like what
Yes,
all involved?
I apologize that it's there's so much information it doesn't read well. This is what I sent to you on Friday.
Yeah.
This is just a general takeoff of what's included in the construction cost, which is clearing, rubbing, excavation, embankment, drainage pipe, basins, retaining wall, some demolition of existing lighting, electrical, and fencing, erosion control, and so forth. And the project cost here with contingency is around $400 and some odd thousand, but then when you add the professional fees and surveys, it goes up to about $479.
So the 12,000 for additional services is what?
That is typically going to be testing, construction testing, and that sort of thing. And that generally runs between 5,000 and 10,000.
So the testing and inspection below that for 9,200 is what? If that's well.
You know, I apologize. Let me just ask Mr. Nixon. Maybe that is the survey.
Yeah, the additional survey services is just something that might be needed. That would be survey, topographic survey, geotechnical testing. If you do a retaining wall, you don't have to have soil borings. And so that's what that would fall under.
At this point, not all services are precisely known. We're asking for an allowance so that we can take care of those when they come up.
Mr. Roy, if this is not done, then we cannot give softball a permanent fence.
That's correct. Let me just jump down to that. Okay, this is right here at the bottom. That's the softball field. And typically, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Haney, but each year they have to remove the outfield fence to make room for the football practice field, which is overlapping. And so if we move that practice field away, we won't have to compromise the softball field anymore. Also, there'll be room for additional parking between the field house and baseball and softball, which is very convenient. So put to all of the sports there. We're also included in this, I'll just point out, is some improvements to the ditch, which is the item that you specified that we would contact the town of Halton about participating in that cost. I have made just an initial contact, but I'm waiting until the first of the year with the new administration to really fully address that with them. So on this field, we would hope to slide this field to the left or the right and add a half field. And it would be similar to this footprint here, which was event parking, which was a way of addressing the need for parking by the football field, but instead Mr. Haney said he would prefer to have the additional half of a practice field. Also, several of these you'll see the blue detention ponds. Those are critical for two reasons. One thing that they do is they help divert or equalize flow so that the stadium doesn't get as much water, which has been a problem for years. Secondly, they give us a little protection from future development to the north and the west, which is ultimately going to happen. So although this particular item has gone away, what I've done is I've taken the footprint and I've taken away the paving, and I have an item for the practice field that's a little over $100,000 in place of this one.
In addition to the 425,000 already?
I'm going to show you a summary at the end, once I go through the sheet. This is another critical project. It does two things. It provides a concrete apron for spectators behind the home side, around the restrooms and the concessions. It also helps improve the drainage at the stadium, which has been an ongoing problem. The estimated cost of that, I apologize. Is $235, and that's total cost. That's not just construction cost. And again, I'll show you at the end the actual numbers. We track funds available for construction, which is construction costs on our bids, but of course we have to present the entire budget for the project for funding. Any questions about the football stadium?
Mr. Newman?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So we're expanding the existing sidewalk underneath the home side. What exactly is, I can see area be sodded, and then I can see a 4-inch sidewalk, like, what are we paving back there? Because I've been back there a few times, so what exactly are we paving?
Well, right now, there's just a sidewalk, you're correct, and all of that gray area is to be paved, so that there's standing room, and also, it redirects some of the drainage.
We're paving up underneath the bleachers.
There is actually some paving that could be under the bleachers as well, yes, sir. At least the first portion of it, there's some supports and columns there, but part of it is clear where there would be standing room. And again, this is just a schematic, this is preliminary for budgeting purposes. We're gonna sit down, and finalize this once we have approval to go forward.
And the paved apron is for standing?
Well, it also addresses some of the drainage issues, redirects some of the flow. But, you know, just to give you an example you're familiar with, we had to add additional pavement at the concessions and restroom at Parkway Baseball Softball for the same reason. When that project came out, there just wasn't enough standing room for the spectators that we used to expect to be there. But I would ask Mr. Haney his input, but to me, the biggest aggravation for spectators was standing on the wet sidewalk there because there was no place else to stand. There was a small sidewalk and that's where the water went, and then the rest of it was turf.
Mr. Rose, that's similar to what we did at Bossier as far as expanding that apron underneath the bleachers, so there's standing room for those spectators that are trying to access concessions and bathrooms.
That's correct. We'll go from a minimum sidewalks, to expanding the apron up to the first support columns under, which gives plenty of headroom, so they could be directly under the stadium itself, and expands the apron back to the bathrooms and concession, where they're not just one sidewalk in front of the concession, they actually have plenty of standing room. We're also, I believe I understand it correctly, we're raising the elevation slightly on some of that to defer water away from the standing areas also, because that's a low-lying sidewalk, and the improvements over the past have caused some water to stand in those areas. The added flow field in orange between under the stadium toward the track is to relieve the mud and dirt under the stadium. And then we're looking and help the drainage actually go to the drainage a little more. So it's somewhat drainage improvement, but it's also a convenience improvement for the growth of that home side. So many people being in there, they can't have, they don't have standing room.
Anyone else?
Let's take it, we'll relocate the light poles before we start pouring concrete in there.
We would coordinate, yes, sir. We've had that discussion this afternoon with Mr. Haney, depending on the will of the board, if we proceed with that portion of the project of the stadium, which I believe Mr. Haney thought that was probably a pretty important portion, was the concrete work around the concessions and home sides. Then we would probably coordinate that with our electrical engineer and our two bids together. So we may hold off on one till one's done and then start the other.
No, we're not going to have. The next item is just an allowance for tree removal. As you know, we reworked the bleachers on the visitor side recently, and the school has requested for several years if there's something we can do to remove some of these pine trees because they make a mess with the pine straw and sap. So this is a placeholder. It would be handled by separate contract in conjunction with the allocations for the other projects. This project does two things. First of all, it cleans up the area around the new gateway that the school built by filling in the ditch and providing additional handicap parking right at the stadium. Secondly, there's a detention pond here which is important because, as I mentioned, it would equalize flow and help prevent flooding from future development. And so this was a project that Mr. Haney specifically requested, and the proposed total cost is $226,000 for this particular item. It would probably just be combined with the other projects you authorized, which would bring the cost down a little bit.
Sure. Are we needing retention ponds in all these locations, or are you just proposing one or two? Because it's been on retention pond on just about every slide.
Yeah, there are 3 total, I think, shown on the plans, and depending on what's authorized, then we'll know. But yes, the idea here is, Halton has had flooding problems in this drainage system. It's regulated by FEMA, and what we're doing is what we can to mitigate for our part, also to help protect us from what's upstream, because the upstream area is what's currently developing. We haven't been required to provide site detention on previous projects, but typically we would be with new construction. And what we're doing is just taking advantage of some areas that are available for site detention, because as I said, it will help keep the flow off of the stadium and the field area. Also, another upside of doing these, they're basically swales with low slope shoulders, is it makes the ditches much easier to maintain. It also increases their storage capacity.
So this project is for 9 handicap spots, some paving, and a retention pond?
Yes, sir, that's correct. Shall I go to the next slide?
Mr. Buckeye?
As you can see, way over here to the left, we have 3 handicap parking spots. When we did this back, whenever it was first done, we had so many handicap parking that we had to have for this whole area. So what they did was they put 3 over in front of the gym. If you can highlight that one right there.
Yes, it is.
Oops. There's 3 over here in front of the gym. Right there. There. Then there's 3 over in front of the football field. So we're asking people to park here to get to the football field, which is not very good. So the 9 handicap spaces are definitely needed. The rest of it I'm not real familiar with, but I am familiar with the 9 handicap spaces. Those seem to be a need from mostly our elderly citizens.
How many handicap spots are we talking about putting in?
9.
9?
Mr. Norwood, was the handicap, the ADA stuff, just not part of code back then when this was done last time?
We analyzed the whole campus a few years ago when we first started our building programs, which was not this bond program but the previous. And we found that we were short a few spaces, but the way that the guidelines read is they don't have to even be adjacent on a campus like this, they can be somewhere else. And that's what Mr. Lockhouse is referring to, is they're spread around campus and it meets code overall. But as far as a particular facility, it may be short of what it would have had if it stood alone. But obviously, if there's parking in front of the science wing, it counts for the overall, but you're not going to use that for a football game. It's too far away. Next slide. Okay, this is what would end up being the phase 2, because we would need to build a new practice field before we could do parking on the current practice field. But this is between softball and the field house, and this is that ditch that runs east and west through our property. It picks up water from the west and carries it through. It picks up our drainage and then goes out under Blackling and goes on to the east and to the south. And so what you're seeing here is putting a culvert in the ditch for a certain segment in front of our paving, an improvement which would include some detention, but it also improved the maintenance of the ditch, and then event parking. The event parking would not be required to be concrete. When you can afford it, it's preferable, and that's what's included in this estimate. But we're not asking for any action on this at this time. This is just part of the big picture. As far as authority to provide additional event parking for this school, this is a good location. And also, the drainage improvements here, that's the portion that we would ask for the town of Hall to participate in potentially. Any questions on this particular slide? Again, we're not asking for this at this time, but this is part of the kind of a master plan.
Would we put in some handicap parking there also?
I'm sure we would. Typically, probably a lot this size, probably have about 3 spaces. What do you think? And then the last slide, excuse me. Several years ago, this was a concrete sump where bus fueling was accomplished. And it's really just a nuisance at this time because it holds water and it's unneeded. And so Mr. Randy asked if we could remove that and just pave it, because that's where his parent drop-off and pickup line is. And so this particular piece is to rework this drive on the south side of the main gym.
That's a preference more than a necessity right now?
I'm going to defer to Mr. Haney on that.
I would say yes, it's a nuisance at times. It doesn't drain very well, so the problem is when we get heavy rains, which is 7, 8, 9, 10 times out of the year, it fills up with water, people can't drive through it. Then it holds mud after that.
This sheet that I put on the screen is a summary of all the projects that we've just presented. You've already taken action on the LED field lights item. I'm indicating 2 numbers. The estimated construction cost is what we use for funds available. That's important for bidding purposes, but for your purpose, you want to look at the project allocation. And just as a starting point for discussion, I put in the projects that Mr. Haney felt were priority here in year 1. And I moved right into event parking and baseball park in the future. And I added the half practice field at North Hazel. So of the projects we presented, we're recommending that we move forward with, in addition to what you've already approved, $1.2 million for the paving and drainage improvements. The total allocation for all of these is $2.274, and that leaves over $1.1 million remaining at this time unallocated. And again, this is for discussion purposes. I can move these numbers around and change them, but I've prepared where I thought we were going with this, and I crafted the motions kind of fill in the blank for these projects.
Yes, Mr. Newman.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Demolition of H building, is it within this? I know there was some questions
Yes,
around.
I checked on that, Mr. Babineau. That's included in the contingency that's already in the project budget for the wings.
Okay.
It's
So
already.
we don't have to take that 175 out of this.
That's correct, yes. This is clear and free at this point as far as allocations. And this is the same, I'm using the same number here that was on your monthly report, the 3.436 million balance unencumbered.
Mr. Buller.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. If my math is correct, the total allocation numbers provided in the handout are slightly more than $2.1 million, which is approximately the cost of a single-story classroom wing. Are we to understand that Halton High School we have already taken care of all of their classroom needs, and so now we've covered the classroom wings, all of our children, students there have a place, and now we can look to these other items. Mr. Norwood, you're raising your hand.
I discussed that with Mr. Haney, and in addition to the H-wing, which is 12 classrooms that is scheduled for demolition according to the Justice Department, Mr. Haney said that when this new two-story classroom building opens, that he'll have 16 classrooms available throughout campus in different buildings for growth. So we did look at that, and we will have some projections coming out, hopefully after the first of the year, with our new numbers, with our new attendance zones, but there were no changes for Hall. So their projections should be rather stable to what we looked at before. We didn't have an urgent situation there at Hall High School to begin with, but adding these additional classrooms that are already under construction really addresses their needs for growth.
Thank you.
Mr. Darren?
I just want to clarify, I want to make sure I understood. Did you say a minute ago that the $175,000 demolition cost of the H-wing is included in the current project?
I spoke with Clarence this morning about that, just to verify, and he has a contingency item that will cover that, and so I asked him to make sure he had a specific placeholder for that, but yes, sir, that's
So that's included in the bid by
That's
ELA?
not in the bid, no, sir, not in the bid, in the encumbrance, in the future obligation. On our monthly report, you have one column for expenses and future obligations, it's included in that, and then you have your ending balance, which is the number we're looking at.
So are you saying that that $175,000 has already been allocated and is included in that 13 point something million for the
Yes.
construction project
Yes,
that's currently
sir.
underway?
The number
Or is that going to
is-
be an additional $175,000?
That's correct, yeah, the number for the admin and classroom, it's actually, the subtotal project cost right now is 12.7 million, and it's included in that, in the future obligation.
What will the new capacity be for the school after we're complete with the project?
I have that information, but I don't know by memory. I can try to look it up and see if I can get to my files from here, because I didn't bring that. I think I have that information, but I don't know it off the top of my head.
And just to make sure, kind of going down Mr. Boyd's path, that there's a lot of construction happening at all right now. Lots. Have we taken that into consideration to make sure that we've got enough space in a building to house the children or the students that'll be in that?
That's why 16 classrooms for the children, that's unprecedented growth. We haven't seen anything like that. So I wouldn't anticipate that would be a need in the next 5 years or so. It's harder to see beyond that, and there is potential for future development, but when he told me he had 16 rooms that would be available, I was wondering whether we should try to save the H-wing, and that relieved my concern about that. So the total number of classrooms that will be available the minute we open that new wing is 12 plus 16, 28 classrooms. So that's a lot of classrooms.
Mr. Newman?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Once again, are we going to go back to Halton to assist with some of this drainage because of where it's coming from?
Yes, sir. Yes,
Trying to
sir.
get them
As
to
soon as
participate in some of this.
Yes, sir, that's correct. The middle sheet that showed the the softball field work and the ditch, that would be the one that I think that would be most viable for them because we're receiving drainage from the west and it goes through that channel. The other areas, in my opinion, where we have detention would actually be our counter of asking them to participate because we'll be helping everyone downstream in addition to helping ourselves by doing that detention. So it would be kind of a cooperative endeavor type of thing, hopefully.
Just make sure we don't forget to go to them for that.
What I did is I sent them the drainage report that Mr. Nixon did 4 years ago. I sent it to the current mayor and the future mayor and their town engineer so they would have that information. And I did make them aware as soon as the board advised me.
Thank you.
Ms. Smith?
And I was sitting here thinking, Mr. Fuller was saying about the growth of, basically the 2.137 million with the 1.1 that we're already spending, bringing that to about 3.2 and a half million, being that that would be a lean. And you say it's unprecedented growth, but in 2006, 2007, the first bond issue, by the time we finished the bond, we thought was last, we had the new wing developed, and then by 2012, we were already needing another wing. So I don't know if that's unprecedented or not, you know, so that's my concern is are we addressing the growth and are we going to need a new wing more than, I mean, I know all of these are needs, but more than this with the bond money?
Well, the thing is, I really can't see it at this point. When we started our program, Mr. Machen directed us to make every high school capacity 2,000 for growth. And that's where we started with this plan, was to try to achieve that number. But as with Benton and some other schools, it's going to be a long time before we get to 2,000. And so we've backed off of that at this point just for budgetary purposes. But that's where that's probably why we have a surplus of classrooms planned at Alton, is because we were originally aiming for 2,000 capacity. I can't tell you that's what's planned at this time, but that's where we began.
Mr. Bass?
Go ahead and then
I'm willing to wait, but my question is the same as President Van Berg. What do we currently have enrollment at Houghton? And then with that 28 classrooms, what does that make the capacity at Houghton? Is that way I know we have this many students, and we have this many students that we can grow to with the 28 classrooms. Do you have?
I can get you the current capacity, the proposed capacity with the new wing, with and without H, and projections, which are 2 years old now.
Let's just say
if you need that to make a decision, I'm not going to be able to get you that tonight. I can get you that promptly. I can get you that in a day or two. But if you need that to make a decision, then I can't give you that tonight.
So once all construction that's been passed by the board is completed, currently slotted, funded construction, that's what I'd like, is the capacity of the school once that's done.
We have those numbers. We have our official capacity as we submitted to the Justice Department, and we have the capacity of the new wing, and we have the projections. It's just 3 different pieces of information.
Thank you.
Mr. Hayne, what is the net gain in classrooms with excluding the H-wing?
Excluding the H-wing, what we calculated as of yesterday with the addition of the 28 classrooms and also we've got 2 half classrooms that we had new builds, so gives you, is that correct, Mr. Norwood? We have 2 smaller classrooms upstairs that can accommodate some smaller classes, which we do have on our campus. We have calculated that we have an English building right now that will be sitting vacant, and a lab building with 3, I guess, classrooms that would be considered extra large classrooms that would be sitting vacant, and the H building would be sitting vacant also. So and then part of the E-wing will be sitting vacant. We calculated if you eliminate the H building, there would be 16 available classrooms for growth, which would be, have no one in there. That was our calculations as of yesterday.
So you have an estimating of 18 classes, 16 classes?
Yes, sir.
What's y'all's current enrollment figure?
I checked yesterday, it was $12.99.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So after we built Benton, what, do they have 50 classrooms? Do they have room for growth? I mean,
Benton is a different case because it was planned that a wing might have to be added in the future. The capacity of Benton was the same as Parkway, which I think was 1470. And we've added a couple classrooms since then, but we knew we were going to be approaching capacity within 5 years there. I think there are more total classrooms at Hawthorne planned than we had planned for Benton High. But again, I would be much more comfortable verifying that with the records and getting that to you.
well, I mean, I'm just sitting here thinking, and again, Parkway was supposed to get a wing at the beginning of all of this, so they got money, $6 million, and then now they're saying they do not need a wing. So, but no one seems to be worried about them growing. You just seem to be worried about Hawthorne growing. I mean, I'm sorry, that's just how I see it.
We have money for our growth. If we're worried about our growth, we have some money that can be used for our growth. I think it's all we're not too worried about at this moment. I mean, if we went and tried to spend the whole $6 million on something or $5 million on something and didn't take into consideration possible growth, that would probably not be a very good decision.
No.
You know, so
I'm new. When I got on board, I went to the tour with you, and one of the things that stood out to me was the cafeteria and the girls' gym, which we discussed. I have no idea what the needs would be or what the cost to address those needs would be. As far as the girls' gym, what we discussed with the cafeteria, but these needs, and Mr. Haynes' opinion, your opinion, Mr. Bypass's opinion, are greater than the cafeteria and the girls' gym and some of the things that you showed me while over there. Is that right? I've got to rely on you.
Well, we rely on
Okay.
Mr. Haynes and his staff, what they feel like is
Okay.
what's needed. Would $3.4 million build a new cafeteria? I don't know. Go ahead.
I just wanted to clarify what we were doing. This is a picking list. This is not approval for the whole $30-something million. This was some priorities that were asked for. And we were just trying to get some numbers out there so we know what we're looking at. So we're not coming tonight to ask for all this. We don't want all this right now. We're still tweaking some of this. So the only thing that we really think we could possibly pull off at this point really is just the home side concrete work. I mean, everything else we're still modifying somewhat, and we can bring it back if necessary. If not, it's dead. That's fine too. But we're just working in conjunction with the school to try and help in some of the needed areas. But it's a picking list. We're not asking for approval for $3 million worth of improvements tonight.
Right.
So we're clear on that.
So we have approved the lights.
Yes,
This is
ma'am.
going on with
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Floyd.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. One thing catches my eye with this proposal, or this presentation of, I guess you call it a wish list, and that is paving and drainage improvements. And Mr. Norwood, would you be very cautious and careful to try to ensure we get all of the necessary drainage improvements at Hawthorne that are required so we can put that puppy to bed?
Yes, sir.
Ever since I came on this board, it has been an ongoing issue with drainage problems. And it sounds like this is a good starting point to maybe correct all of those and once and for all put it to bed.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Newman.
Madam Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to move forward with authorization of bid for item 1.01, 1.2, 1.3, and 1.4 at this time.
That is 1.0 here,
Correct.
1.2.
1.3, and 1.4.
Mr. Newman, have you done the total on what that allocation?
Can do that real quick. Actually, Mr. Norwood, if you will.
That's what I'm doing, yes, sir. I took, she said 1.0.
1.0, 1.2, which is the home bleachers thing, 1.3, which is the tree removal, and 1.4 for current, and then everything else is future discussion and decision.
So there's your new numbers right there. This is the total here. There we go. Year one, construction, funds available for construction, just call it 845,000. Total allocation, 950,000. I just rounded off to the nearest thousand.
And that would leave us roughly 2-something million to have for future consideration should any kind of growth questions come up or anything like that in the interim.
The two numbers that are highlighted here are the numbers you'd be allocating total for all of these projects, total project costs.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and that would leave a balance of 1.4 million there.
Yeah, my fault. I forgot the 800, whatever.
Again, we're tracking both numbers for bidding purposes. So the number in the motion would be 845,000. I just rounded up to the nearest $1,000. But the total allocation that went along with that is this number.
That is not okay.
A motion by Mr. Newman and a second by Mr. Whitetown. Please vote.
One more question, please. Can we run down that rabbit hole of what it would cost for the cafeteria, just to see what a cafeteria would cost?
Yes, and also I think we need to ask Mr. Haney if that's something that they feel like they need at this time.
Okay.
Our current cafeteria, though it is small, it meets the needs of our student population. We do have, in that current cafeteria, we have all the necessary cooking implements that we need, which the kitchen is good. It's just the size of capacity that holds. We can sit 180 in our cafeteria, and we have an adjoining building that's connected to the girls' gym, which is now the butt den that sits another 180, so we can sit about 360 at lunch. So we accommodated that about 7 or 8 years ago by going to 4 lunch shifts, which we currently have. At this time, it's moved on because they all eat in the classroom anyway. So, I don't believe it is of utmost importance because we can accomplish what we need to accomplish there.
So we can still check on it.
I would guess we may already have something like that. We've been master planning Alton for years, and we can come up with some figure for that.
Anyone else? Please vote. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 3. Keogh Road Elementary, Bossier Parish, Police Jury, Eastwood Drainage Improvements, discussion possible action. Bossier Parish fiduciary bequest. Just to give everyone a little background, in case you don't remember, back in the spring, Mr. Bachhaus and I were called to the attention of right behind T.L. Road's elementary, the playground, and the houses that back up to that. There was a lot of drainage problem going on. We've had a lot of flooding and some severe rains, and their backyards were being kind of washed away. The fence has been washed away, several of them. And even the playground at T.L. Rose, a lot of that was kind of washed out. So at that time, in July, we had a meeting here, and Butch Ford, the parish engineer, came and addressed us. And he promised us then he would go and have a study done to see what could be done, solutions to the problem, options, so forth. And he has done that. So he is here tonight to go over what he found and to let us know what the options are and kind of go from there. So, Mr. Ford.
Thank y'all. Good evening. I'm glad to hear y'all talking about drainage, more buildings, and more people coming, because that's what we deal with at the police area every day too. So growing pains are something that we're going to continue dealing with in Bossier. I can promise you. Wait till you see the new census numbers. It's going to be interesting. We have completed our study. We hired Kurt Nixon, the same engineering firm that just did the work at Hall. And Kurt, working with the principal there and with Keith, we have come up with two solutions to this problem. And so I'm going to let Kurt kind of real quickly go over those. Kurt, would you explain to me what you have designed?
Thanks. The basic idea is right now your school sits kind of on the top of the hill, and the drainage off is to the east through the neighborhood, as Ms. Brotherton was explaining. As you just added development, wings out there, pavement, that runoff is increased. So the neighbors are getting more water through. And so really what we're trying to do is intercept that water, bring it around the school, and then out through the Forest Hills ditch. So just stop trying to run it through the neighborhood and just bring it around. That's the basic idea and concept of what's happening.
Thank you, Kurt. So his two options are, one is just to reroute that water that's coming off the school property around the subdivision and actually around Forest Hills. And then he also put an option in there to put a little detention pond on the school property and release it at a slower rate so that we don't have any impacts downstream. So the water's always gone through Eastwood, Marywood subdivision in 2009. We had a number of homes that flooded there. Recently, we've had some folks in the neighborhood calling us. They must have contacted the school board too. I have been in that, since the day I started with the police jury in 2003, I've been in this subdivision discussing drainage with these folks. And so we've come up with two options. Kurt put them together almost identical. You know, he's got like 290, he's got contingency built into it. I think it's about 250 is the construction cost of the project. We've spent about $30,000 with Kurt doing the hydraulic studies and developing the plans and so forth. I was talking to Eric earlier this week. The state legislature just increased our threshold for doing public works projects from 160 to 250,000. So there's a possibility that we could do this work in-house and try to do the work ourselves and try to save some money, of course, using our forces. And so based on all the work has to be accomplished on the school board property. Okay. And so we're going to need y'all's permission to move forward with it, and then we can discuss if we're going to cost share it or how y'all want to do the cost of the project. So I'm here to answer any questions.
Questions? Mr. Bass.
Mr. Ford, last time you were here, I vaguely remember, did you say there were like 5 or 6 homes that are affected by this? pretty much there at the back corner, if I'm remembering correctly, where that dumps in. I seem to remember you saying it wasn't a great deal of homes that were affected.
So there's a couple at the top of that red line that are calling and complaining, and Kurt decided to take some of the water off of them. And then down in the bottom, the last 3 or 4 houses at the bottom of the street, I can't remember the name of the street.
It's Eastwood.
It's Eastwood. They have been calling for 15 or 16 years. The water actually runs between the houses and goes into the ditch in front of them. So there's probably 6 homeowners that have contacted me over the years and complained about it. And then, you know, you got to remember, we're talking about this normal rainfall. In 2009, we had the flood, and there were homes in the interior of the subdivision that flooded as well. So you know, this is going to have a real positive impact to their drainage if we're able to accomplish this. So, but there is about 6 or 7 homes that are impacted.
I was just trying to remember.
Yeah, that's about right.
How many homes are in that, on that street? There's not that many, is there?
Along that each
Yeah.
street, there's probably 10 or 12 through there.
Yeah.
There's a long stretch of street there.
Okay. Mr. Newman?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. Ford, thanks for coming out. So I'm just going to ask you, what is the police jury's appetite for cost sharing on this?
Oh, I think
Get down to it.
I've talked to Mr. Benton before I came this evening, and I talked to him last week, and we're receptive to it. We'd love to partner up. And, you know, we've had an LSA with y'all. We did some work in the last 2 years at some of the schools, and we would like to work with Keith and get a new local services agreement together and cost sharing this and make these improvements. It's a win-win for the folks that are living in Eastwood. It shows that we're good neighbors.
Mr. Dean, I'm sorry.
Mr. Ford, just my own curiosity, the retaining pond in a wet year when it fills up, what happens then?
So it's designed for 100 years, is that right?
No, but I mean, in a wet year.
On a wet year,
When it's cold.
like this past spring when it rained for 6
Correct.
months, you know, it's going to stay wet. And it's
It
going
doesn't hold water.
But do you go back to what it would be without it, when it's full?
It's a drought.
what Eric's saying is a dry detention pond. That means it'll be dry when it's not raining, and then when it's wet, it'll take a few hours or a day for the water to discharge on through. So it just holds it for a short period of time.
And it drains into the ditch, is that correct?
Yes, sir. It's going to go into the go around Forest Hills. There's a ditch that goes all the way around and all the way to Eastwood Bayou. The water naturally goes there right now when it goes through the subdivision. We're rerouting them around, and Curtis checked that to make sure that none of those homes are affected. We didn't want to fix a problem and then cause another problem with Forest Hills. So we increased his task order to go ahead and go all the way down to Eastwood to make sure we didn't impact anybody.
Anyone else? Mr. Newman?
Madam Chairman, I'd like to make a motion for the committee that, to direct Mr. Norwood to, develop LSA with the police jury to evaluate this project and bring that back to the committee for consideration and approval, so we can at least start seeing some numbers on this before having
Yeah, we can do
more
it.
discussion. I mean, you can talk about it all night, but until you know the financial impact, you can't really move forward. So that's my motion to the committee that we advise Mr. Norwood to work with Mr. Ford on some analysis.
We have a motion by Mr. Newman and a second by Mr. Cheatham. Anybody have any other comments?
Was the school there or the houses there first?
Alex.
Yes, please vote.
Hey, thank y'all very much, and we'll get with Keith here shortly and have something after the first of the year. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Thank you, Eric, for coming out. Item number 4, Parkway High. The Arctic Parkway, pedestrian walkway, discussion, possible action. Those are Beers Felicia request. Mr. Newman, is that you? No, that's you. He's next.
I'm giving an overview, and Eric Hudson is here, the assistant parish engineer who presented this to us, as well as Mr. Ford. What you see on your screen is a new walkway from the Wildlife Refuge on the Red River along Author AT down to Parkway High School. They have received a Waterway Commission grant for this work, and it ties in along Colleen Drive all the way into the school's parking lot. And so I sent this out recently so you'd be aware of it. I sent it to the stakeholders. I'm not sure I sent it out before Friday, but I did send it. The only thing that I'm asking for tonight is basically just a right-of-way and temporary construction servitude for them to access and connect to our property. I have a different illustration for that. If I can find it here real quick. All right, this is Colleen Drive, and this is the terminus where it ends. And this intersection right here at Colleen and Sherry is where the public right-of-way ends. So this last little piece is on our property. So basically, I'm asking for your permission for the parish to build that sidewalk.
Mr. Newman?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Are they planning on removing those trees where it terminates there at the end?
It appears to me that they're not, that they're working around the trees. Can you answer that?
That is something I want to make sure we address.
Well, I mean, Keith, that's what it would appear to be. I don't know that we've gotten that detail into everything yet, but I mean, if that's something you want to say, it doesn't matter to us. It's more property we need in the servitude. You know, you push it over, so it doesn't really matter.
I would say we would want to save the trees.
Save the trees, absolutely. I don't want to remove. I mean, they've been planted for 10 years now. They're just now getting going.
That's not a problem at all.
Mr. Cheatham?
And this question is probably for you, Mr. Norwood. So, at some point, it sounds like you just said we don't own any of this land up here, but at some point, that road is going to have to be widened, whether we have to buy land. So, if we come in here and we put that sidewalk right there, where's that going to leave us as far as widening that road?
Well, I did look at that, and I did pass that along to Mr. Ford and Mr. Hudson. When I first received this, I pointed out that we had those discussions, and what we needed was another through lane to get buses in specifically. And that although I do not think there's room in the right-of-way to put a new turn lane on this side, putting the sidewalk would preclude that. There hasn't been any additional study about an alignment or anything, and there hasn't been a traffic study either, but we did have those conversations. Is there anything that you would say on that, Bush?
I mean, Keith, if y'all have a study done that shows that you need additional capacity, it operates, I mean, where the colony ties in,
Well, what it
for us
is,
to look at.
specifically what it is, I think to backtrack a little bit, we have been asked by DOTD, actually, to try to make some internal circulation improvements to get traffic off of Author AT and Colleen before we requested any external improvements with the DOT or the parish. And so we've done that. We've made a connecting drive in the back, so we have a full loop around our campus where traffic can be routed differently. But prior to doing that, when these conversations were had, and possibly still now on certain occasions, the traffic backs up all the way to Author AT, and so when the buses are coming in, they can't get in. And that is the specific conflict that an additional through lane would address. But there has been no additional study at this time. I just put it on the table. I was not aware of this until you made me aware of it, and you were not with the parish, and I wanted you to know we had those conversations.
Yeah, we get to go back and review that.
And Mr. Norwood, I mean, I know we've discussed this before, but just another example, since this is the only exit out of the property, you know, if there's an accident and one of these kids, they run into each other and the ambulance is there, nobody can get off that campus. And so at some point, we're going to need another lane there strictly for safety and also to get people, you know, the buses can have one lane and the cars can have other, get people off the other AT. But I think I brought that up about 3 years ago. I know we talked about it. I know we made the loop on the back part of the campus there, which can kind of ease some of that blockage of traffic. But I'm still concerned that at some point we are going to have another lane. I love having a walkway there, but do we want to put the walkway there before we figure out putting that other lane in there is my concern with that.
So we have an opportunity to get a $1.8 million grant. And I was at their meeting and they approved it. And they put it in their recreation fund right now. So, I mean, they're going to start on this quickly. And so the answer to your question is if additional, there's other options getting traffic in and out of Parkway High School. Okay, it's not just this, add this lane here. There's
Can you elaborate on that, please?
Well, when the original study was done years ago that I was involved in back in '09, you know, there was a talk, there's a connection at Highway 71, and the state told us we were going to have to widen 71 to 4 lanes and extend it on down there. And at the time, we didn't have money. Nobody had money to do that. And so, but that is blocked off. It's gated off where we can't use it. And so, a lot of this traffic leaving Parkway High School goes south. And so, some of it does, I imagine. Some of it goes straight across. But, you know, so, you know, there's other opportunities. Once we get a traffic study that shows what's needed, there's always other ways to go get money for expansion of roadway. So I agree with Keith. We need to study this to see how it's changed. I mean, we made changes within, what, Keith, 2 years after we opened. We swapped bus traffic and the vehicular traffic. State worked with us to try to improve the flow. I think we need to work collectively to let's do a new traffic study. Let's see what's going on. Let's see how the COVID has changed everything because people are driving to school now. They're not riding buses. It's a whole. We have to wait a year, but we need to look at that and then look at see which is the best alternative. But in the meantime, since we have this opportunity to get this grant, let's go ahead and get it. Moving a walking path, adding a lane and moving a walking path. That's not that much cost. We have to do that in the future. But, you know, we're looking at if you ever had to deal with the banners and the coolies on purchasing property, that takes some time. And so, you know, the parish needs to be aware of this issue, and because we'll have to, it's our road, the request will come through us to expand it. And so, that's going to take some time. So I would recommend that y'all look at this pathway and let's go ahead and get this part working, and then we'll move it in the future if needed. Thank you.
Mr. Brewer has a question.
Thank you, ma'am. Before you sit down.
Yes, sir.
I would very much, and I don't know how we want to pursue it here, but you've opened the door on some other means of exiting that campus.
Yes, sir.
And this has been an ongoing issue for several years.
Right.
You open the door, now get with Mr. Norwood, and let's see what two great minds can come up with.
Okay.
I have no doubt the two of you can work wonders. So,
It's all about the money. It's all about the money. It's all about the money.
But I gather that you think there's money available out there somewhere.
Well, I mean, the police jury's been very fortunate, and we've received all types of capital outlay money, grant money with y'all, with the policymakers, with the school board and the policymakers, with the police jury. We can make wonders happen. Look at what we did. We built New Parkway High School, and we did it collectively. So if there's needs, we'll work with y'all. I'm sure the police jury will be glad to work with you to make that happen. But the first start is to get a study done, and let's see what's happening, and let's see what the best alternatives are, and we'll come back to y'all with that study.
Well, I don't think we can stress enough how important that additional exit is. we desperately need it down there. So any help you can provide, we would deeply appreciate it.
Sure.
I think everybody-
We're glad to work with y'all and see what the best alternative is.
Thank you, Mr. Ford. Thank you, Matt.
Mr. Cheatham.
Yeah, just, I would love the 71 access for safety concerns rather than my initial statement of widening this, but either way, I think if we can work and come up with something that 71 access would be huge.
Well, we'll bring DOTD, we're meeting with DOTD in the morning about some improvements at LA3 and I-220 to try to relieve some traffic congestion there, and we will bring it up to the traffic engineer and to Mr. North that y'all are seeking some help on the south end, and we'll start those discussions and then see who's got the money. That's all the money. That's the problem. That's the main thing.
And I think just to chime in on what, I know I've gotten a lot of phone calls about Sligo Road backing up in the morning times. Not only off of Retief being completely blocked off, but they're all the way back to Sligo Road. I get probably 2 or 3 parents a week call me and fussing about it. So just something we can look into, see why that traffic's backing up, you know, all the way down Sligo. Dennis, you probably come down there in the mornings and know you're taking your daughter there. Maybe you can elaborate on that a little bit.
No, I mean, I think it's but there's a problem coming across the railroad tracks when you get into I mean, it's a very short period of time. That's the
15
issue.
minutes.
But, I mean, another exit out of Parkway High School for safety concerns and for police and fire and whoever else needs to access that campus is, I think, the most important thing we can be talking about here. I'm all in favor of go ahead and knock this thing out. I think while we got somebody who wants to fund it.
Yes, sir. We have the funding.
But, I mean, the question would be for you, Mr. Norwood, have we had any conversations with the Bantles or Cooley's about property and additional property? We're still sitting on 39 acres, with 1,300 kids.
Well, yeah, I'm going to say yes, sir. More than once, actually. We originally had an option for 15 acres behind the school, which the board did not act on when we built the school.
Still available?
Well, I'm potentially, what Mr. Bantle said, I contacted him when we had some discussions a few months ago. He said he was receptive to discussing it, what he said. But he needed to see something specific.
So we are in the process, I didn't mean to butt in, but we're in the process of acquiring the right of way for Arthur A. T. south to Taylor Town. So we do not have, we have $4 million budgeted, Eric and I do. We've already acquired the wetlands credits, and we're going to spend about $3.4 million purchasing this right of way. And the property, I think Keith's talking about it, Keith, is the property between the proposed parkway and the campus, current campus.
Yeah, I looked at the general alignment of the terminus of Arthur A. T. And there's like a little oxbow inside of that you would totally miss.
Right.
And that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
The land inside of that widening channel, you're going to be outside of it between that and the river. So
Right.
I don't think there's any conflict there.
We've always talked about a road coming from the parkway on past where Sligo ties in now. You got to pull these documents out and look at them because get the dust off of them. They're about 12 years old. There was going to be a road off the parkway coming into the back of the school too, all the way to 71 and tie into the 71 intersection that's there now that we're not using. So let's dust all of that off and look at that, and we can give y'all some plans for the future.
Great.
You have really done your job tonight, thank you. You made everybody kind of happy.
That's why we made her, buildings and grounds, because she knew somebody on y'all's, board over there.
Hey, thank y'all very much.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Mr. Bronson, I'd like to make a motion. The committee recommends the Bossier Parish School Board authorize construction of pedestrian walkway from Arthur A. T. Parkway along Colleen Drive at Parkway High, and authorize the superintendent to sign right-of-way documents at no cost to the Bossier Parish School Board.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Cheatham and a second by Mr. Bullard. Please vote now. Unanimous. Number 5, funding for field nets at 3 high schools. Discussion and action. Mr. Newman.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This is something I brought forth, and working with Douglas to get some different things lined out. This is to replace the backstop netting at Airline High School, Alton High School, and Parkway High School. This is the netting that is required for safety purposes, to keep foul balls and different things like that from going into the spectators. All 3 schools have a total of 6 fields that need the nets replaced. Some of them are as old as 19 years, and they are zip tied together. They have chairs and everything, and it's a liability situation. And then obviously with the new nets, they'll look better. But this first came up from a liability standpoint, just from various holes in the nets and dry rotting, fungus growing on them, and everything else. It says on here 30 to 40,000. I've been working with Miss Douglas, and we've taken quotes. All three schools for a total of 6 fields to be installed with new netting. About $35,000 total for all 6 fields. It's a local Louisiana company based out of Jonesville that provided the quotes, and they will also be doing installation and the warranty that will come along with it.
Mr. Newman, would you kind of elaborate on why it was just those 3 schools?
Yes, sorry. So we actually evaluated all the locations. Obviously, Benton High School being brand new, this will actually be the first season that Benton High School will use their new softball and baseball field. So cross them off. In plain dealing, they have a new cyclone up for their backstops, and we're actually been working with Mr. Rowland has helped me, and Mr. Roje, and they're going to be doing some additional wiring up there for some floorboards and stuff. And then also Bossier High School just received some new cyclone backstop as well, along with some concrete work and press box, and all that was done. So technically, these are the only 3 schools and 6 fields that don't have something that's newer than, like, honestly, 10 years. You know, all of these nets are minimum of 10 years old. They dry rot in the weather and everything. They need to be replaced about every. Actually, the shelf life is only like 8 years, and we have some, like I said, that are 19 years old. The new netting material is it's a high tensile strength. You know, talking to Mr. Roje about it, make sure we got the right stuff. So that's why just these 3 locations, and then they'll all be on the same maintenance schedule, replacement schedule, because they're all being installed at the same time.
And Mr. Newman, this $35,000, do we know where those funds will come from?
So these funds will be coming from previously completed projects. This is funds left over from projects that have been previously completed. We will not be pulling funds away from any active or future projects. This is all, the $35,000 is coming from various projects that have wrapped up, everywhere from Benton High School to Parkway. I mean, it's literally projects that are completed, and we're taking 5 here that was left over, 6 here that's left over, 10 here that's left over. So it's not pulling away from any current or future planned projects.
Do we have any questions?
I have one.
I'm sorry.
You mentioned 2 schools have cyclone. What's the difference? Why would you not have a cyclone wire with this?
Replacing with the same type material. That's the structure, the poles and the structure that are there currently were designed for netting, not for cyclone. You'd have to do a whole renovation in order to do that. So we're replacing it with the material.
Mr. Gordon.
I'm just gonna make a motion, Madam Chairman, that we recommend Post Fair School Board approve payment for these nets through excess bond fund.
I have a motion from Mr. Bullard and a second from Mr. Cheatham. Please vote. That is unanimous.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
How much are the funds that are available that are left over from projects?
Mr. Bannon probably has that.
I think that'll be in our report possibly at the end.
Oh, here it is.
exactly does that come from as well? Yeah.
The 1.2.
Yes, you see completed projects, the section at the top, the balance is 1.2 million in completed project balances. And since it's a small amount, I was just gonna leave that to the discretion of Mr. Babineau.
Well, I think that if it's gonna be pulled, it could be pulled from those schools that are involved there, that have categorized surplus.
We do have that. Mr. Babineau, did you hear that?
I'm sorry, I'm not here.
The discussion is where would the funds come from? Mr. Newman specified completed projects.
Right.
The list is on the screen, and there are completed projects at Airline and at Halton and at Parkway.
Right.
So, Ms. Smith was asking, could the funding be allocated from those specific line items?
If that's the board's wish. Those funds are all just, they're finished, they're sitting there. So you could choose to take as much money as you want from any one of those projects. You could take all those monies and put them into a general line item, miscellaneous, that we had in phase 1 projects. Not assign any project. That's as you wish. But those numbers are based on the original budgets approved by the board. So you want to make any motion, I think that's how you want to go about it. What money is from which project, so I know where to subtract those from.
I've heard enough tonight about what type of projects we're taking on. I think that if it's still, if those schools still have a balance in theirs, and they're the ones who are getting those projects, that it's
Like there's 4,103 left in Airline. Just going down the list, starting at the top, there's 4,100 at Airline. There's 29 or 28 for Halton Middle. There's another 29 for Halton Middle. There's 17 for various elementaries. I mean, we can go through and cut them all out from those locations, and then some locations will come more for the 35 than others. You know, for instance, Airline only has 4,100, so
I'll get that library though.
yeah, we'll take that library. I mean, it's not like it's site specific. That's why it was just going to come out of the excess because it was facilitating 3 different high schools. But I'm whatever my partners want to do.
If it would make it easier, I'll be happy to defer and let Ms. Smith draft the motion.
I understand that for the schools that it's benefiting, that it should be taken out of their remaining project funds, if they're balanced.
That's fine with me. Can I amend my motion?
Just for a minute, because if we remember, when Plain Dealing was trying to get a canopy, they had to come up with their own funding. But if we remember, when Benton wanted the new bleachers and concrete, it came out of Stacy's fund. So that was $60-something thousand. So if we're gonna get nitpicky about this, let's go all the way back. I think you've done an excellent job. But Stacy paid for $67,000 of bleachers that Benton got, and concrete, which came out of that fund, which affects all of us. And that's just what happened. I recommend we leave it as it is.
Yes,
I'll say this, I do understand where Tammy's coming from on this, but I also do think that this particular project, I
I feel comfortable with it coming, just the way we did it, but we need to keep in mind, if you do not have any money left on a future project, and you don't have money to spend, I think, going forward. I have no problem if we take out of, but in this case, airline does not have any money to help pay for this item. And I do think this is an item that can come from a maintenance fund if we had it, versus coming from this fund, but I think this particular time, our maintenance fund doesn't have money to pay for something like this. So I do understand where Tammy's coming from, and I do believe we need to be careful going forward, making sure if we're putting some little paving project, or if we're doing something like that, that it's coming out of the funds that are allocated for that area, or the leftover funds from one of your projects. But on this deal, I think we just move forward with it as it is, in my opinion.
So what's the flavor of the committee?
Leave it to the discretion of Mr. Davenport where he draws those funds.
Okay, Mr. Chamber.
I'm just gonna put my 2 cents in here. First order of measurement, we're talking about $35,000. Secondly, if it was more money, we'd be taking it out of the particular schools that it's affecting. And so, it has not, I mean, I understand they got to pay the project, and I get that part, and it may be significant because it's $30,000, but if it was $400,000, it'd be a whole different story. So I think, I would say let's keep the rules. If the school's going to benefit, I would like to see it come out of that school's money, just to keep where you don't have $1 million project that affects 3 schools and go, well, let's all kick in on it there. Everybody would have to fit over that. And so I think the price is small, but I would be in favor of trying to keep it from the schools that it is going to benefit. And it's a small project. I really don't care either way. I'm only saying that if we were talking about a $1 million project, we wouldn't be having a discussion about, I don't think, the same direction. But I really, whatever the committee decides, I'll vote for on Thursday.
Mr. Norwood has comment.
I was just going to say that, we have from time to time had needs identified and brought to you, and some of them came up rather suddenly, like a couple of scoreboards needed replacement that we just advised you that if there was no objection, we would use the funds from that school. What the board has typically done on occasion is exactly what we're talking about now, which is reallocate funds from completed projects. That's where some of the money from airline came from. It came from some of the completed projects, and it is now listed under airline. I would suggest that you've given us enough direction to know that for the greatest extent possible, we want to take the funds from the schools if it's available. But obviously, it isn't completely available to airline, so there have to be some adjustments made. If you leave that to Mr. Davenport's discretion, he's not going to take it all out of one account. He's going to kind of spread it around and try to take it from the appropriate projects. Same thing when we go back to Eastwood and talk about that drainage project on Teal Road. I've identified 2 or 3 projects that are complete that could be used to help fund that if we go that far, because the water was never. And of course, we'll bring that to you later, but the best plan for these completed projects is that once the full fiscal year is complete and the project is completely closed out on the accounting books, and that money could go back into a miscellaneous contingency fund that we had before. We had that prior to 2015, so that these projects didn't impact one individual school. But instead of cherry picking, you just do it on a systematic basis once a year. The money would roll into that miscellaneous account to be reutilized if the needs were met. And at this point, we believe the needs were met as far as the original intention of the project. Does that make sense?
It does, but I think what you've seen happen so far is you have some savings on your project, and then there's a need to feel to spend that money. Very good places to spend it. it's being spent, and that's why airline has $4,100 left, because we use money to put in the cameras at Airline High School. So, you know, just because the fiscal year ends and you saved $50,000 on a project, I think you're going to catch a little heartburn over trying to take that 50 grand out of somebody's area instead of going, hey, what other truly need? I mean, if you don't have a need in your district, I get that, but if you truly have a need, then, you know, spend it. But then you come to this project and, you know, I don't know, you just got to figure out how we're going to, what the rules of engagement are going to be moving forward, I think.
So airline's not going to be next.
Mr. Buller's going to start doing the third.
Everybody hide in the library.
So the motion's been approved, right?
Yes.
We've already voted.
I think so.
Thank you.
Here we go. For number 6, memorandum of understanding, Bossier Parish Community College, the use of the facilities, discussion, action. Mr. Rowe.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mine is brief. We just want to, we're seeking approval from the board to enter into an MOU with Bossier Parish Community College for an exchange of reciprocating agreement of facility usage. We have detailed 3 facilities in Bossier Parish, from the Bossier Parish School Board and from Bossier Parish Community College. Bossier Parish Community College has started the track program, and they're seeking approval to use for practice the high school track at Benton Middle School, as well as the Airline High School track, and any other need will be Hall Middle School gym. And they have allowed us to enter into the agreement to use their competition gym, their softball, baseball complex. Mr. Geis and his firm are working on the agreement, and we would just seek permission to move forward with that.
Mr. Cheatham?
So moved.
Second.
All right, I have a motion by Mr. Cheatham and a second by Mr. Newman. Thank you, Mr. Rowe.
I do have a question, Mr. Rowland, about facility usage while we're here and before we vote. It was brought to my attention that Bossier Parks and Rec was not going to have basketball and what I understand, they were putting on saying we weren't allowing them to use them. But I just kind of want to be on public record and make sure that I'm on the same page. We offered to allow them to use our gyms, but they were going to have to use our new agreements and maybe have some more insurance coverage. Can you just kind of...
We were in discussion about how to get to the point to where we could adequately sanitize the buildings at the end of the day. That became an issue with our, especially our elementary school custodial staffs leaving in around 4 or 5 o'clock, and then the facility being used after. So what we did, we worked with Coach Bohannon and his staff, and we wanted to see if there was going to be any improvement in phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. So we kind of monitored that. We set some hard dates, and we needed to have some decisions made, and then when we did not progress to a phase that allowed us to move forward, I received an email that stated they had decided to withdraw the basketball season for this year. So the issue was how are we going to sanitize the buildings when our staff had already gone home, and we never could get any leeway to be able to do that, or to come up with a way to do that adequately.
So and just because, like I said, the way I was approached with it was that we would not allow them to use our facilities, and that's not true.
That's not true at all.
I just wanted to publicly comment on that.
Mr. Rowland dealt with this mainly, but my understanding was they were never comfortable with their ability to adhere to the protocol in terms of the disinfecting the facilities, and they felt like that would be an overwhelming task for them with their limited manpower, and they chose to opt out. It wasn't anything that we would not work with them with. It was very difficult to adhere to the requirements that were in place and still are in place. And so I think it was something that they decided they could not handle. And I know that Mr. Rowland has always worked very closely with them, and we've always had that reciprocal agreement with Bossier City, and always worked well with them. This was just a situation where the task was too daunting for us and them as well to be able to abide by protocol.
We need to vote. So Mr. Chia made the motion and Mr. Newman seconded the motion. So please vote. And that brings us to number 7, 2012 bond construction update. The report of Mr. Valinger. Thank you, Mr. Valinger.
Good evening, everyone. I know you had a long meeting, and so I'll keep this pretty short. First slide. This is a summation. You've seen the slide before each time we present. This really is a summation of all the surplus funds from completed projects, which is distilled from that yellow and white sheet you saw a moment ago. There's been a little change since the last time we presented, mostly because we approved a few small projects in that time frame. And so in some, the fully completed projects has a balance of 228 from the, what I call the recently completed projects, $1.2 million. Talking to your county department, and they are working to finalize those numbers since those projects are essentially closed. We're working on those. I'm hoping those numbers will go just a little bit when we get done with that. And then down from the current projects, of course, with the money from HOT primarily, you've got $5 million. And then as I get the numbers from the projects you talked about earlier, particularly at HOT, I'll adjust those numbers and get some updates as that progresses. That gives you a total of right at $10.4 million in surplus funds at the moment. Any questions on that slide? Okay, next slide, please. For an immediate, you've got a total project budget of $3.5 million. Your cost to date is just under 3.1, leaving you a surplus of $412,000. The project's moving along quite well. The large black line is the total 12 months that the contractor has. That green bar under June of 2021 is where he is pushing to complete the project, which will be in about 9 to 10 months. So about 6 to 8 weeks ahead of schedule would be perfect for opening of school in 2021. So that's going along really well. Any questions on that item? Okay, next slide, please. A little bit more detail about Benton. The deep foundation work has been completed along with the spread footings and the underslab electrical. The grade beams are going in right now, and as of yesterday, they were 90% complete, and the contract should be 100% complete with that item by this week, by the end of the week. The next thing would be to install underground plumbing and then the slab, and their goal is to have that all done by Christmas, which means starting early next month, as soon as you come back from the Christmas break, you'll start seeing walls going up in that project. And then, of course, with the anticipated completion in June, that will be 6 to 8 weeks ahead of schedule. Any questions? Next slide. A couple of recent photographs. These are from yesterday. This is the ongoing work. The top photograph is them actually putting concrete in the grade beams. The bottom photo is an overall view of the grade beam work. It's a little hard to see, but on the far left, the grade beams are actually installed. What you're seeing, the kind of yellow in the picture, all the wooden formwork for the grade beams. So that's going on pretty well. Really pleased with how that is progressing. Any questions on that in the intermediate? Okay, next slide, please. Cold total project budget of $2.2 million. Project cost to date, including the security work that was done a year ago, it was $2,179,000. You've got a surplus of right at $20,000. That also is a 12-month project. The contractor is, because it's a different construction than that is going to be used in all of his 12 months. The green bar at the end shows the anticipated completion on his schedule. And then on the last line, the orange line is, should we have worse than average weather? We've had some years where the weather's been a lot better, had some delays, as happened with Hotpool about 3 years ago. There's potential to go further into the summer, but right now it's looking to complete the latter part of June. Any questions? All right, next slide. Overall on Coke, again, that work started June 15th. If you've been near the school, you've seen the block walls are nearly complete. The work is about a week or two behind. They had a little bit of weather. They're also needing some additional block, and they're trying to get that from the supplier. They have been working with us to try to catch up. He's still showing his full finish on schedule. He's got a little work to make up in the next couple of months. I think he may be good with that. As that develops, I'm sure keep it informed. Any questions? All right, next slide. A couple of photographs. The top photo are all the concrete block walls that are up right now. The block work is probably 90 to 95% complete. And because of that, the steel is also going up. That's the bottom photograph. Those bar joists will support the roof of the new school. And so those two contractors are working simultaneously right now. Any questions? All right, next slide, please. High school, you've got a total project budget of $16,784,000. The classroom wing has a total right now of 12.7 with a surplus of 3.3 change. The other projects, the football stadium is drained a couple of years ago. That's been completed. There's no surplus on that one. The baseball facility has a tiny surplus of about $1,600, and on the bleachers, we've got right at a $3,000 surplus for a total of $3,378,000. That project is scheduled for 22 months with completion, the contracted completion by April of 2022. The green bar is showing the current scheduled completion in February of 2022. So that's going along pretty good, and has been about 6 weeks ahead of schedule, and has been in that route for about 3 or 4 months right now. So it's moving along. Any questions on that slide? All right. Next slide. Again, construction started one day after COPE in mid-June. Again, 6 weeks ahead of schedule. The slab and gray beam installation is about 75% complete. The last section should be complete later this month. And with that, the steel will start being erected. Some of the steel has already been shipped to the site. There are 4 more truckloads on the way. About 2 of those truckloads should be received next week. The contractor, we met with him this afternoon. He plans to start erecting the steel on the west side, which is where the admin, and then do work from west to east to support the existing admin building. So next month we'll start seeing some vertical construction, really seeing some progress on that. Any questions on that slide? Okay. This is the last slide. This shows you, this is from earlier this week. The top left is the slab that was installed last week on the admin building. The crew actually worked until midnight that day to get that in. It was a bit of a slow go, but they kept at it. Once you start pouring concrete, you just can't stop it. So they kept at it. The slide on the bottom is the 2/3 of the eastern half. 2/3 of the classroom wing. The dirt, you see between the two is that last section that we're working on right now. Any questions? All right. That concludes my report. Thank you very much for your time and attention.
Thank you. Any questions or comments?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. And that concludes